Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This week, parents beware. We're dropping one F word after another. Actually, a major F word slipped into last week's episode. As you may recall, Blister ventured completely alone into the dark, dank hools where wharf rats live. He hoped to recruit them as mercenaries in his war to take down Dr. Van Sangfreud, but in the end, things may have gone awry. It was in the middle of Blister's bid to sway the wharf rats to his cause that he actually dropped the F word. Did you notice it? Well, you and I noticed, but let's be honest, your parents and your little sister were too caught up in the awful terror of being all alone in the hools, surrounded by bloodthirsty wharf rats. They were too busy being scaredy cats to notice. So, for their benefit, let's back up a moment. Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. This week, Blister confronts the skeletons in his closet. Blister climbed over the canal wall. Blister stood inside he opened his mouth to speak. He had to see this through.
You see, I was all alone once. A long time ago. I had a family, but then I lost them.
There it was, that great big F word. Family. But then the wharf rats repeated it.
Family.
Only Blister doesn't understand what they're saying, so they had to say it again, and then again. But then Blister eurekas, and he drops the F word again.
Family. Yes, my new family.
So I guess in truth, last week's episode was riddled with F-bombs. You could say it was effusive. Oh, there goes another F word. Now, before you angry parents and fine, happy FCC officials flood my email with complaints, let me point out that this F word is as artistically crucial to this story as any F word a rap artist drops while slinging rhythmic rhymes.
Double F. High fee on a bit, yeah. Doing this shit from my heart, yeah.
Oh, my producers have informed me that we can't play any rap music with F words until and unless I prove my point about F words and their part in this story arc. Basically, my argument has to be less ephemeral and more effective. Between you and me, listeners, I just think the producers are in a huff because they obviously didn't notice the F word last week, and that's because they were a bunch of scaredy cats about the hools. Anywho, I argue, your honors, that this F word is central to Blister and Muck's journey. There's no bigger word than this one, which impacts Blister as much. His attitudes towards that word and all it represents will determine whether this story has a happy or a tragic ending. Well, there's possibly one other F word that's just as important, but it's gonna drop in this week's episode. Will you notice it? Episode 13. On the Brinks. Blister bulleted out of the hool and up the side of the canal wall. Did the wharf rats spew out after him? Or did the nectarine shards of the setting sun slicing through the clouds hold them back? Blister did not know. He dared not look back. He dared not slow his pace until he was within sight of the sign for Tenebrous Hill. All around, wind gusts punished the woodland trees and shrubs and grasses. A large cargo truck sat at the intersection. Gorgeous George crept out of the cargo hold, his ear horn cleverly holstered for easy access. The elderly elephant stepped hesitantly, while Orville guided him down the ramp. "Here you are, at last," Orville called to Blister. Bile, Scab, Spit, Grime, and Gag waved from their seat on George's back.
"Where are the new recruits?"
Blister asked after he caught some of his breath.
"The trouble with rats these days is them's is having no,
Bile rooted around for the right word.
no,
Food.
throw pillows.
Leisurely pastimes.
Grime, Gag, and Spit offered suggestions. Scab sneered.
No, they're all dung-brained scaredy rats. So, you didn't have any luck enlisting anyone?
Well, we was having luck of a sort,"
Bile said. He forked his fingers into his mouth and whistled. A mangy pack of stray dogs trundled out of the cargo hold, cruddy tails wagging.
"We're ready."
Yep.
So ready.
Ready.
The pack unleashed a flurry of eager devotion as they churned between George's and Orville's legs, nearly toppling both the man and the elephant.
Sit down.
Scab ordered, a command the dogs obeyed. They sat, panting, grinning, tongues swinging over their jaws. George petted them and clucked.
"Good doggies."
Where are your recruits?
Scab capped her paw across her brow like a visor as she scanned the distant horizon.
I'm afraid they all had previous engagements this evening.
"Dreadfully unfortunate,"
Orville said.
"My fellows will be along shortly. Prompt had better be our path to the house."
Gorgeous George offered his trunk like a step stool, enabling Orville and Blister to climb aboard. Together, the elephant and dog pack crushed through the woods, separating the grand mansions. The wind mined the forest, chipping gold, bronze, and ruby leaves off branches. The dreary sky above threatened rain, with clouds as smudged as coal dust. Mistaking the darkling day for night, crickets tweepered. When Orville calculated they were nearing the fringe of Yana's property, he suggested they stop to do a bit of reconnaissance, investigate the come and go of any guards, be they cats or orbs.
"How was we going to see the house with all them's trees in the way?" "We'll go where the trees aren't in the way,"
Orville replied. He pointed to the wind-whipped treetops.
And how are we supposed to get up there? I don't suppose you know how to fly.
"Fly. Go on, fly, little birdie."
Gag, Spit, and Grime supplied. Orville instructed the trio to ride in his satchel. Blister perched on his right shoulder, while Scab and Bile claimed the left one. Once off of George's back, Orville sprang to the scruffy side of a towering spruce tree and climbed as nimbly as a squirrel. The dogs reared up on the tree, whining and begging to be brought along.
"Oh, should I wait here?"
George inquired, the big cone sprouting from his ear like a tropical flower.
Yes, George, do."
Startled chipmunks scattered, scolding Orville with their rapid-fire barks.
You're awfully spry for a bookworm,
Blister remarked.
"All those hunting expeditions with Dr. Van Sangfreud,"
Orville chuffed and grunted as he shimmied up the trunk and hoisted himself from branch to branch. The wind hissed between the needles. The trunk swayed, and the branches flailed as if the tree were dizzy and about to pass out.
"Come to think of it,"
Orville spoke between puffs.
"never would I have met Madame Putruska, were it not for those safaris.
I thought you knew her because you ran the zoo.
Blister said, clutching tight to Orville's sporting jacket.
No, I knew her long before the zoo. We were both in the same business, you see.
What business was that? Collecting pine cones?
Scab snorted. Bile hooted with laughter. Here, Orville rested between swaying branches.
Droll is your commentary, but no, we rescued animals from the black market tradesmen. Men like Mr. Drummel.
He explained.
Myself and 2 other young boys, under Van Sangfreud's tutelage, formed a sort of rescue committee. We had so many connections throughout the zoological world. When we heard of exotic animals being sold as pets, or to perform in ragged circuses, we tracked them down, freed them, and used our connections to return them to the wild. We bumped into Madame Putruska on more than one mission, and over time, we began to work together. So, suffice it to say, Blister, far is the distance where you can lay your fears to rest. You picked the right man for this job.
Orville resumed the ascent and eventually poked through the top of the spruce tree. The wind roared like tidal waves, and the sea of trees cracked and rumbled. Wedged securely in place, Orville pulled an expandable spyglass from the satchel. The sap on his hands rubbed off on Spit, Grime, and Gag, who complained athletically.
Poor old house. Looks worse than when I last saw it.
He paused.
And it appears no work has been done on the busted wall of the ballroom where you escaped, Blister.
Then they left the door wide open for us,
Blister said. Standing on tiptoe, he sighted the crooked spires and gables of the junky castle. He shivered, knowing full well it had nothing to do with the icy wind. Muck was in that grimy, rotting house. Rip and Spindle were trapped there too. He was entirely to blame. His own selfishness had put in danger the creatures who cared about him, and whom he cared about. His friends. He had friends. Or had. Now they all surely despised him. Maybe, if he rescued them, they would forgive him. Orville compacted the spyglass.
Dear are the memories I still harbor.
Orville sighed and reclined his cheek upon his hand. Blister tweaked the man's earlobe.
Wake up, Cupid. There's no time for swooning and broken hearts.
Broken hearts.
Orville sliced the words.
Utterly hard, calloused, and unfeeling is the heart you'll find beating in this chest, where that woman is concerned. Make no mistake.
Out of the bushes below, a whippoorwill jangled. The sound struck Blister as singular, given the otherwise subdued silence of the woodland wildlife.
Huzzah! Here they are now,
Orville said before trilling a whistle identical to a robin's call. He monkeyed down the tree. By the time he reached the ground, 2 young men were petting, or attempting to pet, the dog Typhoon, swirling around their knees. Like Orville, they wore sporting attire. Knee-high pants buttoned over long socks, heavy jackets belted around the waist, and flat caps tilted at jaunty angles. Had one not been wearing mostly green, and the other wearing mostly brown, the men would have otherwise been impossible to differentiate, given their identical faces. Blister recalled the photograph of Dr. Van Sangfreud and his band of safari hunters. He remembered young Orville and the twin boys next to him. Could these be the very same boys, now grown? Orville shook their hands and introduced his creature companions. Then he said, "To all of you, I present Doctors Bertram and Bartholomew Brink."
How do you do?
The Brinks chorused, tipping their caps.
Bertie most recently authored a bestseller.
Now see here,
interjected Bertie, evidently the one in green. Orville continued,
Sold nearly 700 copies. Native Tortoises of the Tortugas, a calculation and examination with differentiations among Chelys fimbriatus and Macrochelys temminckii. Have you read it?
When confronted with this question, the rats consulted each other, then shook their guilty heads.
Pity,
Orville clucked.
Oh, was that the bedtime book last week?
George asked.
Excellent memory, George. Yes.
Bedtime books.
Blister sloped his eyebrows.
Indeed,
Orville said.
I read to the animals every night.
And I thought the iron bars were the worst part of living in the zoo,
Scab mocked, making Blister laugh. Orville waved off these jibes.
I believe a good education is the foundation of a happy life. Now, Barty gave the most astounding presentation to the National Ornithological Society last month.
Barty, the man clad in brown, cut in.
Astounding, my good man.
Orville ran on, undeterred, asking the rats,
Don't suppose you saw the transcripts published in the paper? Observations on the oyster catcher, Hematopus australagus. Some ecological aspects of feeding behaviors.
After yet another guilty consultation, the rats admitted they had not seen the transcripts.
Now see here, Orville. Enough of your gushing. We received your mysterious missive. Devilishly vague on the details. What top-secret mission have you gone and cooked up, my good man? See here. Is this for Madame Piotrowska?
Would you believe she has vacated her caverns?
Orville raised his eyebrows. Barty and Bertie raised their eyebrows and tilted back their heads.
I'll explain everything. But first, we must dress appropriately if we are to infiltrate the enemy's camp.
He stuck his hand into the satchel, apologizing to Spit, Grime, and Gag, who were toppled and upturned as he hauled out great bundles of clothing.
Now see here, lab smocks. Hang on.
Barty shook out the garment.
You've made a mistake, my good man. These are ladies' lab smocks.
The wind tugged peevishly on the dresses and pinafores.
I've made no mistake,
Orville said. Bertie Brink blinked.
See here, you want us to dress like ladies?
Barty Brink barked.
Again?
We'd best leave off here, while the Brink brothers and Orville break in their bustles. If you're like me, you're probably wondering, how are 6 rats, 3 costumed scholars, several dogs, and an elderly elephant going to rescue Muck, Rip, and Spindle when Dr. Van Sangfreud's meganimal army stands in the way? Sounds like a ton of effort. Speaking of F words, did you notice the F word lodged smack in the middle of that reconnaissance work? That's right. Blister actually referred to the creatures he cared about as his friends, not his associates or apprentices. Friends. Ticks and maggots. Who would have thought that possible of a tough-tail street rat? Obviously not the producers, because they failed yet again to bleep the F word on a children's podcast of all things. I mean, OMFG. G, which is short for oh my funky galoshes. What the F, which we all know means what the feathers. I can hear you listeners are also in shock. You're thinking, get the F out of here, as in, get the flame out of here. And I shall, but only because this episode is at a close. Tune in next time to find out what happens when Blister's bandits take on Yana's forces. In the meantime, stop by blisterandmuck.com and use the contact form to tell me what you think will happen next. Know any F jokes better or worse than this one? Knock knock.
Who's there?
Oh, thank you for helping with the credits, Blister.
No problem. Now, who's there?
Oh, F2.
F2 who?
F2 go potty.
That's a good one. I gotta tell Bile that one. I'm pretty sure he'll get it too.
Share your effing amazing jokes, and I'll give you a shout out when I share them on the show. You'll never miss an episode when you subscribe to the show directly at blisterandmuck.com. Subscribing is free, and you get an email alert as soon as the newest episode releases. While you're at the website, I encourage you to please lend your support by making a donation or by selecting a cozy, colorful hat, shirt, or face mask from the Blister and Muck gift shop. A portion of your purchase helps cover the costs of web hosting, sound effects, and music licensing. And you'll find a special surprise from the entire Blister and Muck crew has been enclosed with your order. And if money is not a ghost that frequently haunts your home, you can definitely support the show by giving it some stars or a positive review on whatever app or platform you use to listen along. Reviews and likes help other listeners discover this madcap caper. Special thanks to Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Special gratitude to Double F for his hip-hop track, FMH. Additional music from Chad Crouch, Kevin MacLeod, and Mon Plaisir. Record scratch from Ludwig. Rewind sound from Nick Playma Stories. Mark D'Angelo brought the wind, and Lunch Money rustled the leaves. Barking dogs from Craig Smith. Whistle and bird sounds from Tamara, Canto Exploras, and Inspector J. All other sounds from the public domain. I feel effervescent whenever I think of the support this show receives from my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.